Hello and welcome to Metahuman, where we share the secrets of the world leaders in health science, biohacking, and the evolution of human consciousness. My name is Josh Hanna, and today we're here with Teemu Arina. Teemu has a professional career of 2 decades as a technology entrepreneur, author, and professional speaker. Mr. Arina is one of the forefront thinkers on the digital transformation of human affairs. He has received the Leonardo Award in 2015 and was selected as one of the top 100 most influential people in IT in 2016. He is the co-author of the best-selling Biohackers Handbook series and is also the curator for the Biohackers Summit, which is the world's top conference on biohacking. He is also the co-founder of the Biohacker Center, an independent think tank focused on optimal human performance, health, and well-being. Teemu is about as deep as it gets when it comes to the subject of biohacking. Teemu, how are you today?
I'm good. It's evening here in Finland, and it's basically a lot of light because the sun never sets at this time of the year. So you can go through the night. And I was actually camping last weekend in the wilderness. And even though I didn't have a flashlight or any of that, I didn't need it because the sun never really set fully. So it's that time of the year. You need to all this biohacking to make yourself sleep better.
That's what I was just going to ask. So like as a biohacker and someone who is obviously very concerned with circadian rhythm and sleep and recovery and things, how does that affect you? I've always kind of wondered that.
Well, definitely the winter blues is basically the sun never rises and it's dark all the time. You need a lot of things for that. For example, daylight lamps and traveling to more healthy latitudes for the sunlight. But at this time of the year, it's a lot about protecting yourself from all the light pollution that's coming through that is in the blue wavelength. So the sun is a pretty strong regulator and light in general of our circadian rhythms, especially morning exposure to daylight is key for keeping your biological clock in sync. So the supranucleus center in your brain is keeping the clock. And this time of the year, you definitely need some eye shades so that you block out the light. You need maybe some blue light blocking glasses, and that's pretty much it. And when it comes to then using, computers and all those things, that the kind of artificial source of light at this time of the evening, it's very easy to get seduced into using all these, tools and devices. Using some software like Iris or Flux is pretty good. But in the end, like in my case, I'm a pretty good sleeper, so I can get a really good sleep. What really bothers me actually this time of the year is where I live is all the birds that wake me up at very early on. So I think they are even more affected by this, light in such a way that in the middle of the night they start screaming. So I need some earplugs for that.
But you really have to kind of engineer your whole circadian rhythm during this time of the year.
Yeah, there is a lot of evidence that shows that keeping your circadian biology in sync is key for good health. In terms of reference values, if you look at any lab biomarkers, we think that things should be at within a certain reference range, or that things might be static, so that there is a certain value for the fact that you are pre-diabetic and so on. But what really affects those lab values is also your circadian biology. So actually all those numbers fluctuate throughout the day. And there is a unique blueprint for each biomarker for all of us that taking hormones or taking things like blood sugar regulation, even things like lipid values, they tend to fluctuate naturally throughout the day. And for that reason, you might take a morning glucose tolerance test if you're checking if you're pre-diabetic. But if your circadian biology is out of whack, you might get suboptimal results that are not necessarily reflecting fully what's going on. So that's the thing. The other thing is feeding patterns. So people tend to eat late in most cultures, dinner, but there's a lot of recent studies that show, especially from people like Satchidananda Panda, that time-restricted eating might be a good idea. So you may want to stop eating once the sun goes down, or eat very, very lightly, because that can influence a lot of different metabolic processes, especially recovery. So when the sun goes down, it's a signal to your body, it's time to start rebuilding things. And if that's the time when you inject yourself, basically a bloodstream with all kinds of things through your gut lining, that might be interfering with those processes. So during the day, when you're awake, that's an catabolic state where you're breaking up stuff for whatever performance reasons you might have, getting things done, finding food, mating. And in the evening, when you go to sleep, that's an anabolic process. So that's when the body goes into healing. That's when the body goes to recovery process. And keeping those things in sync is very important. People are nowadays disrupted by modern lifestyle, by stress, by environmental pollution, like light sources, etc. Even like media, entertainment, all kinds of things that are not really helping to keep a healthy pattern going. So what I really like about quantified self, so the fact of measuring and gaining deeper understanding of yourself, it's a mirror to yourself. It also, through doing these measurements over time, those could be some electric signals from your body, like the Oura Ring, looking at your body temperature, nervous system, sleep quality. It could be lab values, looking at your basic biomarkers, metabolic and micronutrients, etc. Maybe looking at your feeding patterns and all those. Those can give you insight in terms of if you live a balanced life. The body rewards equilibrium, the fact that you are in a state where all things are going through natural cycles. And when you disrupt those cycles, it kind of loses the beat, so to say. And that can lead to a number of different diseases, namely cardiovascular disease, diseases affecting the nervous system, and also blood sugar regulation issues, diabetes. So all the things that we're kind of suffering in a Western modern lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So I read the book that you co-authored, the Biohackers Handbook. And I actually really enjoyed that. The first chapter was, yep, there we go.
Yeah, it's a big book.
It's a big book. And I really, really appreciate that the first chapter was on sleep. And sleep is something I've been getting into just biometric analysis using, I don't know if you know Elias Arjan and Samir Santake. They created the BioStrap, which is a nice piece of hardware. I've tried the Oura Ring and like that as well. I'm using the BioStrap right now. And yeah, no, I really like the sleep metrics that it offers. But in your book, that the way that you guys frame all of the kind of specific things that you should be looking at for optimizing quality of sleep and recovery, it's really well laid out. And in fact, the entire book I find is really simple to understand. And for people that are kind of just getting into the biohacking space or just getting into like health optimization in general, it can feel like a lot to take on if you don't have any background in health science or medical literature and you're looking at complex biometrics and biodata. I know that some people are a little bit intimidated by the concept of biohacking, but really, and the way that you guys laid out the book, and as far as like, here are some simple strategies for sleep and recovery and exercise and nutrition and all the basic things that if someone really puts their energy into that, it just seems like it's really easy to metabolize.
Yeah. So the basic structure of the book is to look at the basic building blocks of your life: sleep, exercise, nutrition, mind, and work, and understanding those as systems. So we start from the different biological systems, like in terms of nutrition, where you might be looking at the gut functioning and how you metabolize nutrients. In the mind chapter, we might be looking at the brain and consciousness. And in the sleep chapter, we are looking at the electric signals in the body and what's happening in your body when you fall asleep. And through the scientific literature, you can discover things that might be helpful for optimizing sleep, improving deep sleep, light sleep, and sleep onset, a number of other things. Now, in the end, when you gather all the data, the question is like, what works for you? And that's where quantified self and self-experimentation NS1 comes to play. All of that information, that could be expert advice or it could be scientific literature. It's third-party knowledge until you test things on yourself so that you know for sure in your case. And self-experimentation is kind of in the core of biohacking, and it goes in cyclical manner. So you have a hypothesis of something. So let's say a supplement like passion flower might help you to fall asleep. Then it's a matter of actually implementing that hypothesis and see if there is results. Now you can subjectively feel something, but once you have some technology like the O-ring or BioStrap, you can maybe start measuring if you are getting the results that you're seeking in terms of sleep optimization. And you can't really eliminate either the placebo effect from these things. So when it comes to biohacking, people do a lot of different interventions based on what they hear, and isolating the things that have real changes and effects. That's where definitely science and comes to play. You can also do measurements in yourself. So let's say your friend might be administering you a placebo dose and passion flower every second day, and then you quantify for a couple of weeks and see if there is significant statistical improvement. But in the end, what many of these experiments are missing is what I call compound effects. So there tend to be that these things stack on each other. So it's not one single silver bullet that improves your sleep. It's a number of different things. You fix your gut, you fix your light exposure and circadian rhythm related things. It might be that you're supporting your nervous system to calm down. Maybe you also support your mind by writing down the things that are bothering you. And then you might take a few supplements that might be improving sleep. Maybe you have some tyrosine, maybe you have some glycine, maybe you have some passion flower, you might be having some magnesium. And in the end, that's when things often start to happen. It's not through a single intervention, but through multiple different avenues that have all high likelihood of improving sleep based on the literature. But there's somehow also, when you do these things, it's an iterative process of learning where you start to intuitively implement strategies. So it's no longer the diet becomes some kind of rigid protocol that you follow like it was religion, but you start to use diet as a means of supporting what you do. So if your day is going to be a lot about physical exercise, or maybe it's about endurance, or maybe it's about cognitive functioning, you want to write something, or maybe it's a creative process, then you will approach from moment to moment things slightly differently. If you're conscious and you know what you're doing, you can definitely move beyond using rules in thumb using protocols, all of that. So I think that's kind of the mastery of many things in life. So you kind of, in the beginning, you're an apprentice. You start a martial art. You start imitating the master, and once you're ready, you can basically become a master yourself. You're superseding your master. You're creating your own art. You're connecting things in new ways. And it's this learning process, this iterative process that builds resilience in us. And for that reason, my next book is actually going to be more about resilience. It's going to be diving deep into how to become a resilient being. And there is no 30-day program to get fit for summer. Neither there is a 30-day program to fix your brain and gut and all that. But that's what we are sold at in this consumer-oriented and driven culture. But in the end, most rewards come through vigorous repetition over a long period of time. We're adjusting small things. And there are some things that I've learned. So there's biohacks that I don't use anymore. There's things that I definitely rely on. It's kind of getting into the bare bones of it. And what works for me, it doesn't necessarily work for you. That's kind of the beauty of biohacking, is that you have to walk the path yourself to figure out what really works. But you can definitely learn from reading papers, listening to experts, and then eventually trying these things yourself. And if you can do some testing, biomedical or bioelectrical or whatnot, journaling, it helps you to reflect back on you, what you're doing. And it also helps you to pay attention to what you're doing. I think one of the key benefits of tracking yourself and quantified self in the end is not the numbers. It is the act of tracking itself. Mm-hmm. So in science, you have this thing called observer effect. When you observe something, if you look at, something light, if you try to see a wave, you will see a wave. But if you start to look at it as particles, you see particles. In a similar manner, when you start measuring your sleep, you start to pay attention to sleep. You're already improving your sleep. When you start to measure your steps or your physical activity, you become conscious about doing those activities. So for me, it seems that biohacking can also be a modern approach to perhaps enlightenment, perhaps to be able to pay attention to the immediate presence and moment and become more knowledgeable about yourself, especially in those areas where your subjective feeling is either cheating on you or escaping your attention. So I definitely believe, great yogis and Zen Buddhist meditators and martial artists, they figured these things out for sure, by just careful observation. But modern humans have lost connection to their bodies and their minds. I mean, in the US, 70% of the people are supposed to be on some kind of medication, prescription medication. The average expected lifespan, or based on some of the latest studies, is actually going down now. For the whole industrial era, it has been going up. Now it's going down. So to me, this culture that is supposedly very, very well off is doing something that is detrimental to our progress as human beings in evolution to become better versions of ourselves and collectively to raise to a new level. So there's definitely a paradigm shift that needs to be done here. And I think there is a huge disconnect from yourself, because you kind of, in modern society, you believe someone will take care of you. Someone, you're a taxpayer, someone's going to take care of you. But, it's not, the taxpayer money is not going to do much for you. So you really have to take responsibility. And what responsibility is, I really like what Sadhguru talks about. It's the way how you respond, how you respond to things. So that's what biohacking can really teach you, is how you respond to yourself. And even though you might have an idea how a perfect day goes, but up until now, there has not been a single day that goes exactly like you plan. So in biohacking, there's a lot about routines and daily habits and Also how you kind of structure your day so that you get the exercise in, that you get the sleep optimization in, so that you get the nutrition dialed in, that you get your work done. I see it might be a blind spot, which is basically that you become too hard on yourself to plan things out, that things need to go exactly like you want. And that always leaves out some serendipity, accidental discoveries that you can only discover by kind of letting loose on your routines. So what I really suggest people to do is to experiment with their routines. If you've never done any diets, try some out, you might see a huge difference. If your breakfast has been the same all the time, make a change and see how that feels. So that's another thing, is kind of how do you break through the envelope of what you think you are and how you're supposed to be functioning. And the worst thing that could happen is that you start, living someone else's dream, that you are imitating someone else, not really figuring out things on your own. So to me, biohacking, or the way how you optimize your health, performance, well-being, for me, it can be a journey to balance. It can be a journey to, it's not about better, faster, stronger, although there's a lot of people who promote that idea that you're supposed to be very well functioning human being and high performer. But there's a lot of sick high performer culture out there, which is basically a lot of people who are geared towards biohacking are looking in biohacking for a solution to their problem, which might be that they don't sleep enough, which might be that they work too much, they're too stressed out, they're not fun to be around with. And then they, get some benefits out of it. Maybe they start drinking some kind of fat-based coffee in the morning and they feel more energy, or they get some kind of nootropic and they feel like they are cognitively performing, and then they might have some kind of sleep hack. But all of that is cheating, where you're cheating on yourself, really. Like, it's just enabling you to do the same more, and instead of changing the whole paradigm. And so it can be a path to changing the paradigm. I've definitely seen that people get interested in these things. But often the first thing is really just like, immediate gratification.
Yeah. When you say paradigm, do you mean personal paradigm, like the way that you're relating to your life?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you are a stockbroker and you live in New York City, and you try to perform cognitively better, starting a ketogenic diet, getting your inflammation down, improving your brain performance, maybe getting some lion's mane in for neural growth factors. All of that might help. But in the end, like, you've chosen that lifestyle. Then the question is like, that could be a path actually where you at one day decide that, I want to live in nature. I want to escape the city life. Because in the end, what I've noticed personally is that many of these are coping mechanisms related to modern lifestyle. And when I go to nature, I get incredible results in terms of sleep quality, recovery, heart rate variability when I sleep in nature. Like last weekend when I had a tent out there, I didn't do much biohacking, but my numbers were better than in a city environment with all the biohacks that I did. You know where I'm going here? So you can use a pulse electromagnetic field therapy device with a spike mat, or you can just lie on the ground with some cones,
Yeah. And this is a great topic to talk to you about, because I think that a lot of people who follow you see you as someone who's very futuristic and technological. And technology, following Neuralink and all of the kind of cutting edge technological developments that are happening right now. Technology seems to be a double-edged sword, where it can improve quality of life, but it can also very quickly eradicate quality of life and also be this force of destruction to nature and to the world with the rate that technology is exponentially growing without any foresight of consequence, such as the oil industry. When Carl Benz and Henry Ford created the first automobiles, they probably weren't thinking so far into the future that they would realize that now there would be a climate crisis associated to the oil industry. And so technology has this way of kind of spiraling out of control sometimes and ending up being something that we don't want it to, which I think is why Elon Musk is very fascinating, talking about how if we don't have enough foresight, AI could be, in his words, a potential existential threat. So it's interesting hearing you, someone who's a leader in the biohacking movement, kind of talking about, yeah, we can do all these technological biohacks, but at the same time, if we just go out into nature and spend time connecting to the natural world and swimming in rivers and laying on the ground in the forest, that can sometimes be what dramatically improves our health versus all of the different technological red light biohacks, all the different things, which are great. And I think we both love them. But there's something really interesting that brings up for me about you advocating more towards let's connect to the natural world.
That's right. So while I take some mushroom spores, here we go, some Myco shield from host defense for my immune system support, I want to jump right into the question of man-machine and man-technology relationships. Now, as you said, technology is a double-edged word, but as it is, it's a leverage. If you look at the dictionary definition for it, it's a leverage for doing something, getting something done. Now, on its own, I mean, if you look at the people who invented the atomic bomb, they saw vast energy sources that could be harnessed for humanity. They saw only good things. Now, obviously, that technology was also used for some other purposes that were a bit more sinister. Now, in a world like this, technology is not good or bad. It's the humans who use them or abuse them. And that's another thing. Our relationships throughout millennia have been shaped by person-to-person relationships. Now it's person to things. You know, you wake up with a device, you go to sleep with a device. We disconnect from each other by the fact that we fiddle and look at our mobile phones when we go to a restaurant with friends. And technology can be very luring. Now, what Elon Musk is pointing towards is that technology can be a way of collectively improving the human condition, helping us to get to the new level. Marshall Mcluhan, who was a media theorist in the 60s, he coined the term he coined the term global village, and the fact that electronic medium is connecting us into something he lended from Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit in the late 1800s. The noosphere, the mind sphere, the technology can connect us back into the tribal society that we came from. So through industrialization, moving to cities, we didn't come as much together as much as we disconnected actually from each other. So we don't greet necessarily neighbors anymore. We don't have town square meetings where we discuss daily things, but you experience world through television or media, some kind of medium. And what the electronic medium can do, it can connect you directly to the global consciousness in a way, and bring that community and tribal society back together. And that's kind of what Facebook could be, with all these groups and pages that you like. But in the end, the algorithms behind there have been harnessed not for improving you as a human being, but for making you hooked into addictions, making you pay attention to messages that might lead to purchases. And that's kind of a world where artificial intelligence is already interfering with your life. So when you open up YouTube, you can think of a supercomputer that's aimed at your brain, guessing which is the video that you might spend more time on next. And you start from something productive and useful, maybe a recording of this talk, and you end up somewhere else. Maybe you end up watching Alex Jones' channel on conspiracy theories. That's or cat videos. So that's what happens very easily is if we're not careful, is that our relation with technologies is where we first, what Marshall McLuhan said, we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. So there's a symbiotic relationship with our technologies. So we create our technologies, our leverages, our tools, like the automobile or the combustion engine or the computer. And then it shapes us and society. And it might be that you sit in front of your computer for 4 hours. Maybe you sit in a car for 4 hours, stationary. You use an elevator to go everywhere, or a lift. And then suddenly your body, gives away. It's not functioning properly. So what I find paradoxical is that as much as technology was supposed to save us in industrial modern times, like frozen foods, and we're supposed to give mothers more time, and washing machines and ironing and devices and all those, we're supposed to free us time so that we can spend that time on more creative, more productive things. Actually, it just freed more time to spend more time in front of television or clicking on mindless likes on social media. And what I find paradoxical here is that we need technology actually to save us. So we create new technologies like a wristband, maybe a smartwatch that tells you to stand up. You've been sitting for too long. Or you might have some kind of technology like I have rescue time on my computer where I can turn on a mode where it blocks my access to social media so that I can get some productive time dialed in. So I think we can't escape technology by just running to nature, screaming naked like hippies. But we have to take our technology, and we have to take our technologies and tools with us. Yeah. Understand that society has changed. Just like sailors can't go back to the time with sails. Millions of people would die of hunger. You just need modern steamboats and whatever we have today, but we have to do it consciously, that we are basically apes with atomic weapons in our hands, and we have to use those wisely. And we have to have that discussion on ethical technologies and how they can actually help humanity instead of helping to destroy us. That's
the perfect segue for the next question I wanted to ask you. So in the same regard as humanity's inability to have enough foresight to see the destructive capacity that the oil industry could create inevitably, right? Let's say, and again, so it'd be really hard, or if you could send someone back 150 years ago and explain to them the potential crises that we're facing right now, nobody would have any context or idea what you're talking about. It'd be probably impossible for someone to predict that long ago, before there was an oil industry, what we're facing today, to be able to go, oh yeah, I could totally imagine climate change and the crises that we're facing now. So in the same regard, if you could imagine a year, like a future world where we've averted the potential crises that we've created through a lack of foresight and predicting the consequences to our actions. If you could go forward 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 1,000 years, and visualize a world where technology is able to integrate with nature, like in biomimicry and solar punk and some of these movements that we're seeing the very beginning of now, what would your vision of a transformed humanity look like with the integration of nature and technology?
Yeah, so what we already see today with machine learning and artificial intelligence is that the greatest potential it actually has is in prediction. So it helps us to move from reactive mode and even proactive mode to actually predictive mode, where we can just calculate that if these things that are going on in your body in terms of all the data that we know from your genetics and your environmental factors and your lifestyle and your blood work, if you continue these patterns of behavior, it will shorten your lifespan in this way statistically. And if you do these small changes in your patterns of behavior on a day-to-day basis, you might be able to improve your life, reduce risk for Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease. So when we take similar, the way how I see it is that AI is like a third lens. The first lens might be a microscope or a telescope. Microscope and telescope enabled us to see beyond what our senses are capable for, into the microcosm and into the macrocosm. It enables us to understand where we are right now, and brought us the keys to space travel, even keys to sequencing the human genome, whatnot, understanding that the information is primary in biological systems. It's kind of replicating forward in code, and that the environment is changing that code, influencing that code in different ways through mutation or epigenetic change. Now, if you take that and you start to look at that, it enabled reductionist logic. So reductionism enabled us to break things down. I mean, if you think of what science is, it's basically you take something, you break it down and try to put it back together, break it down and try to put it back together. Now that's how that's brought us all the modern medicines almost, hacking the different metabolic pathways, seeing what the drug does. Now, in the future, what AI and machine learning enables us, it enables us to tap into complexity that we can't see otherwise. So if the fourth dimension is our ability to be wise, informed by history, understanding where we are right now, predicting where we might be going, and making decisions that enable us to move towards that future. Now, we have to take that technology to decision making in a wider sense. So on an individual level, you might have some machine technology that is capable of solving problems at a level where you are not able to access. It is giving you time to time suggestions what to look into or what to perhaps consider. It's kind of guiding you, it's advising you in a wise way. In a similar way, we could take that on a collective level to political decision making. So instead of having a bunch of politicians thinking what could be, the answer, you use technology to figure out what are the questions we have to ask in the first place. Like, to me, it seems we are asking the wrong questions all the time, and it's directing our attention to answers that are irrelevant for the survival of our species, or improving the crisis that we have in terms of food and energy and so on, or even in our minds. Now, to answer your question, where we might be in 100 years is definitely we are merging with our tools and technologies in a symbiotic way that enables us to be more predictive, and each and one of us to have access to information much bigger than Wikipedia, in an instant, almost subconscious way. And that changes everything. And the whole system of what it means to be human in a human network, it becomes so complex that we have no idea what's behind that point. So it's definitely, I don't know if it's a singularity, but it's close to it for sure. Things get extremely polarized in such a world because the empowerment of a single individual goes off the roof. You can buy genetic modification technologies like CRISPR-Cas kits for $1,000, and you can start doing stuff. You can download some videos from the internet. Now it gives power to a lot of people. Now everyone in the biohacking community has been going deep into this, has realized that how much influence you can definitely have on your own health and well-being, which is beyond what the current system can offer to you, even if you had the money. Now, that's kind of the thing where I see all of this going, is that it brings empowerment, but also responsibility. And we don't necessarily know as humans how to deal with that, because we get easily corrupted with our own selfish needs. So then we need to maybe give away some of the control to the very tools that we created. So maybe that's some kind of super intelligence AI thing that makes better decisions than us. But I think we will do that in an iterative manner. So instead of machines taking over, that they're subjectively separate from us, I think they will be intricately part of us, every one of us, in a way that we don't necessarily think about it much anymore. And that's where I see it is helping us to go. So evolution by natural selection will perhaps be replaced by evolution by intelligent design.
Interesting. So in visualizing a future potential reality, because everything is just probabilities, right? The future consists of possibility and probability. And then all of the decisions that we make as individuals and collectively will ultimately lead us to an actual reality of the future. So right now that could change in a lot of different ways based on the politics and the decisions that we all make as a collective. So in your future where you see a positive integration of technology and nature is kind of in this model of a human AI symbiont relationship, where we become highly symbiotic with artificial intelligence. And that is actually, it's pretty similar to Elon Musk's best case scenario when he talks about the different scenarios with the development of AI. So what do you think about Neuralink? I've seen some photos of you using neurofeedback and working with brain-computer interfaces. I also do some of the same work with neurofeedback. It was a part of my lifestyle for a while. And but Neuralink specifically, so Elon's talking about high bandwidth interfacing with computers, for the human brain to interface with a computer in high bandwidth. Do you think that that's a necessary part of this process, and that people should seriously consider interfacing their brains with computers?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at longevity research, the likely scenario for living a longer life is actually your brain in a jar. So when you are a brain in a jar, you definitely need a Neuralink to, make something, do something worthwhile with all that time in the jar. So our bodies are decaying much faster than our brains. So if you can kind of regulate the homeostasis of the brain, you can definitely you can definitely live a long time. Now, when it comes to Neuralink, the idea here is that our input is quite vast compared to your computer, like your mobile device. I mean, your mobile device has a bunch of sensors, some of them more accurate than what you can see and feel. But I believe that as humans, we have is a vast repertoire of receiving signals. Now, the ability to process them, we are also pretty quick and fast in many tasks compared to computers. But the output, where you convert some idea or a thought into action, that's where we are lacking. in terms of executing on our dreams. So anyone who's built a startup knows that. So you have an idea, but you need to use these fingers to program that. And it takes a lot of time and iteration and years and venture funding and team of people to do something. Now, if you can somehow almost telepathically make things happen as you think of them, that already makes things easier. Perhaps in the beginning, those are simple instructions like find the answer for a specific question, like where is the closest nearby fish restaurant. Now, the questions and the answers will get more complex as technology improves. And it eventually means that in terms of computing, we will move beyond our current paradigm of user interfaces. So if the first one was the most dominant one that we still have today is the keyboard and the mouse, maybe this paradigm that we lived in is now more of a touch-based interface. Now, the human eye, I think, is the key for the future of computing in a way, because in terms of the optic nerve, we have reverse engineered and we understand that part of the brain pretty well, like what kind of communication goes through the optic nerve from your retina. And right now, we, like in this very situation, we are using computer screens to send photons on our retina, and it requires a lot of energy to do that. You could do that in a much lower energy footprint directly to your brain, and you could simulate and create any kind of hyper-realistic simulations, potentially more lifelike than any computer screen you ever experienced. So I think the current paradigm of VR headsets is kind of boring compared to what could be possible by just hijacking right into the human nervous system and modulating and changing the information stream that we are receiving. Now, why is that important? Is that if you look at AI, it's all about computer vision. It's about, detecting on photographs if something is a cat or a dog. It is about even when you have any kind of self-driving car, it has sensors which are basically different types of cameras that then use that information to make decisions. Now, if you can combine, if you take the human eye and you start playing around with the information that our brains are directly receiving. And I think there is a vast possibility in human nervous system, not just like putting some kind of chip in your brain, but just something else, somewhere else maybe in your body. So imagine you have a magnet in your fingertip. That's kind of one of the biohacks that some of these grinders have been working on, is that enables you to sense magnetic fields within 4 or 5 months after neuroplasticity takes place. You no longer feel tingling sensation in your fingertips, but you sense magnetic fields. Now imagine that you have some kind of device on your hand that modulates the magnetic field around your hand. Now that would enable telepathic communication. You would be able to receive information without hijacking your existing senses like hearing, touch, smell, any of that stuff. Right now, mobile devices and computer interfaces are hijacking something from you. They are hijacking your visual or auditory or tactile systems in some way, like maybe a vibration could be the way to send you a message. Now, what is possible with human nervous system in terms of man-machine computer interfaces is vast. And Neuralink is one approach. There's many others that we could take. But I'm a big believer for sure that, Homo sapiens is a tool maker. So we make tools. And there's also, there's even the term homo faber, man who uses tools. And that is what we are. Like, and why do we all do all this is maybe because of laziness, like we just want to get stuff done, like, but also out of disability, like that we are incapable for something. Like the first application for Neuralink will be definitely for disabled people. But then the question is like, how do we move beyond that? How do we move through the regulatory issues around, injecting a chip in your brain? But at the same time, I'm a bit concerned that if we really know what we are dealing with here, I mean, there's the whole debate going on if our mobile devices are actually unhealthy for us in terms of the frequencies that they are producing. On a cellular level, definitely they can increase some oxidative stress, and if it causes cancer, perhaps. But if you have cumulative stressors on a cellular level that attacks your mitochondria, one of these things more is definitely not a good thing. So, and even the act of using a mobile interface so that you look at the screen is actually causing something called the text neck, which is in young children is causing all kind of biomechanical problems. So imagine you have now a VR and people will be walking around with enhanced vision. Now that might be messing up with their memories. So they don't necessarily anymore separate from reality things. So did I speak to you or were you here in Helsinki? I wouldn't be able to necessarily remember exactly. So you get all these almost schizophrenic moments in your life that we are getting them already. We kind of know about things, about people you haven't been meeting for a while through, peripheral access to their information streams on Facebook and Instagram. We kind of know what's going on with people, and it's completely, it's not the direct experience. It's some kind of reflection of it, and often made by them, even intentionally. So then the question of, who you are and what you're interacting with becomes key. And I'm more and more conscious about how technology is trying to program me as much as I'm trying to program my technologies. And the fact that on my mobile device, for example, for Facebook and other things, I have this thing. So when I open up, let's say I open up Facebook, it makes me take a few breaths before it gives me access to my fix. So it gives me a little bit of time to think, what am I doing here? And I'm not giving power to the people in Silicon Valley with this who are trying to optimize my engagement, because what it's doing when I get this arousal that I might have new messages, it gives me a little bit of distance to that stimulus. And many people are talking about, going for a digital detox nowadays. And that's what I'm going to do next week. I'm going to go hiking. I'm going to be disconnected from technology because it gives perspective also how we can use these technologies more wisely. And so as much as I'm a proponent of man-machine relations, as much as I think that we will merge with our technologies and tools, as much I am concerned about our disconnect from our true nature and where it's taking us.
No, thank you. That's a lot. I really appreciate your perspective on this. And I think the more that we can create a symbiotic relationship with our own technologies and like you said, like get to the point to where they're not just manipulating us and programming us, and we can use them as tools. Hopefully we can create a positive symbiosis rather than a parasitic relationship.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see, because it's very subtle and we don't necessarily fully understand how these things are programming us. Even though you might want to be more clever, you might not be able to escape it fully. So it just means that what we optimize for. So as humans, we are still in charge of optimizing these systems. So if we are optimizing for engagement with all and any means, then that might not be, the most beneficial way to optimize things. So if as a user, I might be able to actually choose how YouTube algorithm is optimized for me, or how Facebook algorithm is optimized for me, where I would be ready to pay for the fact that it's not optimized for advertising dollars. So I would be very happy to, open my wallet and give money to someone who optimizes my intelligence instead of my consumer behavior, for example.
Absolutely. No, I love that. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about is your guys' conference is the Biohacking Summit. So that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, so 1st and 2nd of November in Helsinki, we have our 5-year anniversary of the Biohackers Summit. We have organized the event now 8 times, several different cities every year. And the Helsinki one is our flagship event. It's going to be a couple of thousand people on 2 days. And basically, we are bringing together people who are interested in optimizing health, performance, and well-being. So there's a lot of experts from that industry and forefront runners who do these things and experiments with themselves. What I really love about this community is that you find all kinds of people who are more versed and deeper into some specific topics in biohacking than you are, and you can learn a lot from. If you're a vendor selling some products, you can learn a lot from the feedback that you get. That's kind of what we get from some of the companies that have been there, that it's really a place where the audience is very well educated and they ask really hard questions. And then in terms of presentations, that's kind of one thing, but we want to keep the quality extremely high, so only keynotes. And then we have a lot of side events like the Optimized Day workshop, which is basically looking at every single moment of the day, from the moment when you wake up to the moment when you go to sleep. Like, what could we do together to optimize the day? Yeah. And there's the upgraded dinner where we, use wild herbs and modern culinary kitchen techniques and understanding of biochemistry and biohacking, and we cook together. And then there is, during the conference, in Finland is the origin of sauna culture and sweat bathing. So we have a thermogenic spa where we have saunas and cold thermogenesis and so on going on, and that's pretty cool for anyone who is interested in that.
Absolutely. And where do people go to learn more if they want to come?
Yeah, so a good place to start is at biohackersummit.com. They can find more information. And if you can't come to Helsinki, you can just watch the live stream. That's also available. And we have recordings also of previous conferences. And the Biohackers Handbook authors will be there also. So we are actually launching the first time the English book. I mean, it's already available, but that's going to be the official place where we kind of discuss the book. And so that's it. Now, I also recommend people to follow the Biohackers Handbook and Biohackers Summit Instagram pages, because we have a lot of useful biohacks and content that we share on a regular basis. On Biohackers Summit, we share interviews with our speakers. There's going to be 2 live streams this week with some speakers. And on the Biohacking Book Instagram, we have a lot of tips and tricks that concentrate some of the biohacks that people may want to get into.
Awesome. Is there anything that you are really looking forward to with this year's Biohacking Summit or Biohacker Summit?
Well, it kind of goes back to where we started. The first one was about optimizing your work day. So now we are just optimizing your day 24/7. And I'm organizing the program so that kind of every speaker is looking at a specific hour or pattern of the day. And I really look forward to the presentations from many of the speakers. So Dr. Tom Stubbs is going to be talking about epigenetics. I did an epigenetic test recently, and not just looking at my telomere length or some basic lab tests, but looking at genome-wide changes in gene expression. And based on that, statistically, I'm two years younger than I'm chronologically,
What test was that? What was the name of it?
It's called chronomics. So,
Chronomics.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of genetic tests out there that give you some idea of your risks and some hereditary disease and maybe something about nutrigenomics. But the epigenetic tests are definitely the future. So with chronomics, you can see the influence of what tobacco smoke or living in a polluted city might have had on your genome. You might be able to see how stress and lack of exercise or regular exercise may have helped you metabolically just by looking at gene expression and then the aging process itself. So yeah, that's for example one of those topics that's going to be there. Dr. Molly Maloof is going to be there talking about optimizing your lab work and optimizing your day. There is Casper van der Meulen, who is one of the leading teachers of the Wim Hof method, is going to teach people techniques how they can use breathing to optimize their day. So keeping up the energy levels, help digestion, help wind down, stimulate yourself if you need for a meeting. So just basics, when it comes to these things. And definitely the vendor area I've been looking at what's coming together. It looks amazing. Anything from coolest latest biohacking gadgets to new types of biomedical testing companies. So yeah, it's exciting times for sure for biohacking. I've noticed that in the last couple of years, a lot of people have entered the scene, building their own online courses or podcasts or supplement lines or whatnot. So there is a lot of people definitely who are turning this into not just a lifestyle, but a profession also, which is happening right now, which was not the case like 3 years ago, for example, in my experience.
And when is the summit again?
It's 1st and 2nd of November. And if you can make that, we are also planning another event in Amsterdam in next year. It's probably going to be in the end of May, but still kind of a work in progress. But there, we're definitely going to be focusing also on psychedelics. I think there's no better place than Amsterdam to dive deep into those tools that have also gained a lot of attention and traction in the biohacking and tech community, for sure.
Are you personally a proponent and advocate for safe psychedelic use?
I'm a big fan of what MAPS is doing. I think it's really good that the research is opening up that has been kind of under the rock since 60s, 70s. And I think people should be perhaps a little bit concerned about some things like microdosing. Why? We don't know yet what repetitive use does to you over time. Like sacramental use, I think those are already well and tested for thousands of years, but like doing psychedelics on a day-to-day basis might not be a good idea. There's some receptors in the heart that are also like 5-HT2A receptor in case of LSD can also lead to cumulatively similar problems in heart muscle as some medications that have been pulled out of the market. We don't know yet. But definitely like those can be doors to help people with depression, anxiety, and mood, and many things that modern people have. And that's kind of the area where most of the research is right now, is in treating things like post-traumatic stress disorders and anxiety or fear of death or any of those things. But I think that the greatest potential really comes from high dose experiments and in a safe and sound environment, in guidance of people who know what they're doing. And unfortunately, that kind of cultural context exists only in a few places in the world now, and while most other places have prohibited that kind of use. But maybe it will be revived, and maybe there will be a modern approach to it. But I really hope it's not going to backfire on itself.
Yeah. That makes me think specifically about Dr. Rick Strassman's work with the spirit molecule, where he was given permission to administer high doses of intravenous DMT for the first time, at least in United States history, by I don't know if it was the FDA or US government, but he was given permission to do medical research. What's your opinion on DMT specifically as a psychedelic?
It's indigenous, so it's built, it's made in our body, so it has a purpose that Richard Strassman also speculates on. And to me, the kind of the link to near-death experience, the mystical experience, religious experience with this particular molecule, the spirit molecule, is definitely sound. I don't know really like what to make out of it, because most people who experimented with it, you need to slow it down in some way to really kind of get the benefits, to kind of get an idea what's going on. And definitely ayahuasca has been one of those preparations through millennia by indigenous people that has been used. And to me, it's not just the molecule itself, it's somehow the preparation, the way how it also is quite heavy on the body. That if you think of a lot of trauma, it's not really just a cognitive thing, it's a body experience also, where things reside. So it's actually good that it show up. It's actually good that you purge physically something from your body in the process. So there is something more than just this thing that opens up the doors. And for that reason, they often mix in Amazonian different tribes. They use different herbs alongside with it to induce healing. For them, ayahuasca is not the healing itself. It is a diagnostic tool that might point to another plant that might be able to help you. That's the way I understood it. The shaman never heals you. It helps you kind of to do the healing yourself. So we might sometimes forget these things when we're looking for a source of healing in these sacraments. And I think we kind of misunderstand some of it. So but definitely there is a lot of potential to understanding those systems related to serotonin, and probably also the interventions that are linked to serotonin are key, because most of modern life has been about dopamine. It has been about reward mechanism. It has been about addictions. It has been about stimulants, stimulating you to do things. And while wisdom, perspective, leadership, leaders on average have higher serotonin levels, good leaders that are thought to be good leaders by their peers. So dopamine seems to be kind of like very selfish, drives selfish behavior, kind of me, while serotonin seems to be more about the empathic dimension of it. And so we'll see where these things go. But I'm a big fan also of chocolate, anandamide.
Me too.
That's another molecule. Anandamide is Ananda is it is a bliss god basically, and anandamide is also a molecule that your body makes in small quantities. For example, in runner's high, where you go through a specific threshold, you feel pretty good, and that's anandamide that is doing its work. It's related to the endocannabinoid system. So there is no question why chocolate is kind of heart opening and often linked to love and so on in so many different cultures. So I use definitely chocolate. I mean, but you can't feel the real effects of chocolate if you use a lot of stimulants, because caffeine, etc., will just override it. But if you cut out caffeine and you play around with chocolate, you can see its true power for sure. So, and that's another thing about nootropics and so on. It's not necessarily more stimulation. It's how you kind of relax your nervous system down to a more healthy level. So in my case, I have a very highly active brain. I'm meditating eyes open, basically based on my QEEG results. What works for me is not really stimulants, but things that help to relax a little bit, like GABAergic things, maybe even slow down signaling. I like ginkgo biloba. I like ginseng. I like things that stabilize the system, like blood sugar management. I get a lot of benefit from those. Shisandra is good.
Kind of more of the adaptogens.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of adaptogens. Also, my co-authors are big fans of them. So we are big on adaptogenic herbs for sure. I think they're not understood well enough yet, and there is potential in them. That might give you the sustained focus and energy that you seek in a more healthy and balanced way. So in the way, it's also how you oil your system, right? And it's not necessarily something that has a very obvious effect, is stable, might have a side effect. So that's another thing about stimulants, and it could be psychedelic drugs and so on. You need more time for recovery if you do those things. You need more sleep. So you can't just use them to get away with sleeping. You just have to know that you are using your resources at its maximum or close to when you tap into some of these powerful tools. So you have to be conscious about how you use them.
Yeah, awesome. Teemu, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. And everybody who's watching this interview, please check out Biohackers Guide. It is an amazing book. I highly recommend it. And thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. And I look forward to meeting you somewhere on this beautiful planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'd like to come out to the summit. That sounds like an amazing experience.
Absolutely. Me too. So maybe we meet there. So Josh, thank you for this interview, and have an amazingly healthy weekend coming along.
Likewise. You as well, Teemu. Thank you so much.
Yes.